Welcome back to Break the Bank Garage. Today I'm putting in a little elbow grease to get this Taurus that hasn't been driven in 3 years back on the road for my little brother who's about to get his driver's license. So I'm on my way to go start a car that hasn't been run or driven in probably about 3 years. It's sitting in a driveway right now. This is actually going to be my brother's car. He is turning 16 soon, so he's going to get his license and he needs a car. So this 2001 Ford Taurus is the perfect first car for him. It hasn't been run in many years, so there's a few things I want to do to it before we start it up. I'm arriving prepared with a jug of motor oil, a new oil filter, a new battery because the battery in it is shot, I know that for sure, and a spark plug wrench and some fogging oil. So the plan is to get the new battery in it, but before trying to turn it over, I'm gonna change the oil, take the spark plugs out, and put some fogging spray in there. Make sure the cylinders are well lubricated before I try to crank it over. So here is the Taurus. Like I said, it's a 2001. It's really in pretty good condition. There's not major rust or anything. No big dents, nothing major wrong with it that I know of mechanically. The tires we already replaced actually in preparation for this. Fenders are fine. And of course, this rear quarter is a little rusted out, but nothing too bad. When you step back and look at it from a distance, it looks pretty fine. I think this is in pretty good shape for a Midwest 2001 Ford. All right, let's pop the hood, see what we're working with here. That doesn't sound good. I don't know if the hood popped. Oh no, that's not good. Oh, hallelujah. That would suck. I'm gonna start off by removing this upper plenum so I can get to the back spark plugs. So I'm getting to work on removing the intake, but then I realized because of their rusty, seized EGR line, it might just be too risky to take this off, and I'm pretty sure I can reach back there anyway. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get that EGR line off with the tools I've got. So I'm gonna just try to reach behind here and get the spark plugs out without taking the upper plenum off. But I did have to take the airbox and that off to be able to reach in there, so not all wasteful. I think this one will be relatively easy. I can't really see back there too well at all actually, but I can feel the spark plug. Either good news, I got it loose, or bad news, something broke. I don't think this swivel is doing me any favors at all. Let's try this. No. No. Oh no. My thingy is broken. So I just dropped it right off the bat. I'm not at home, so I don't have a magnet or anything. So I had to take this wheel off, and I found it. Yes. I don't like how tight these spark plugs are coming out. Hey, I don't think it looks too bad. A little bit of fogging oil now. Got this one loose. Dos. So I got all three of the back spark plugs out. I got the fogging oil in there doing its job. Now I'm gonna go after the front ones here. I would say these wires are coming off nice and easy. A lot of times you break these wires as they come off, but these ones seem to be in pretty good shape. Oh man. All right, now I want to take the fuse out for the fuel pump. It's gonna be this one right here based on the book. And I'll disconnect the coil pack so we're not getting spark to these wires. Now I can swap out the battery. Now we've let that fogging oil do its job with the spark plug still out. I'm gonna turn the engine over. For one, just to see if this battery's good and make sure it turns over. For two, to get any excess liquid out of the cylinders so I don't hydrolock it. That's some good news. It spins over really freely. It's definitely not seized. I wasn't really worried at all about that. If I had been, maybe would have been smart to crank it by hand first if it had been sitting for like much longer. But I knew, you know, a couple years ago this thing ran. So I'm gonna start putting things back together. One thing you may want to consider if you're trying to start a vehicle that hasn't ran in a long time is pumping out all the old fuel, siphoning it out, and maybe running the pump, but we're not gonna do that today. This one hasn't been too long. I'm sure the fuel isn't great, but I don't think it's gonna ruin anything. And honestly, that's just a risk we're gonna have to take because I don't have time or even the tools to do all that. They're threading in a lot easier than they threaded out, which is good. Just a little bit of corrosion. And after I get these in, I gotta put all this stuff back together that I started taking apart when I was gonna take the intake off. All right, so now that we got the cylinders all well lubricated, we're ready to do the oil change, and then we should be able to start this thing up. It's really tight, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then once you get to a point where you feel like you could do it by hand, oh, there you go. And you can leave the plug in here. Guys, this is my brother Nate. This car is for him. This is why we're doing all this work for it. He's turning 16 pretty soon here, and this is what he'll be driving. Is this your first oil change?
Yeah.
Sweet. It's looking good. So the oil filter on these is directly above the starter. So I'm gonna put a target bag over this starter so it doesn't leak onto there. I can already tell, I think I got sold the wrong oil filter, so we're gonna have to go to the store and get one. So for this year of the Taurus, they had two different 3.0s. They had an overhead valve and a dual overhead cam. So it's very common when you go to the parts store to get the wrong parts, but I got the oil filter and put it on. All right, that should do it. You don't want it too tight, that's perfect. All right, we can fill it up now. Let it down as gently as possible. Nice and gentle. Nice and slow at first. There we go. Well, you can go as fast as you want as long as it doesn't go over the top of the funnel. All right, you ready to start it up?
Yeah.
Do you think it's gonna start?
Yeah.
You think it will? Okay, let's see it. Uh-oh. It wanted to fire. Try again. Hold up, hold up. Hold up, hold up, hold up. All that smoke could just be the fogging oil. Try it again, just for a little bit. There we go. A lot of smoke, but I think that might just be the fogging oil. Oh man. We got smoke coming from everywhere. I don't think it's misfiring though anymore. I think it's, I don't know. We'll have to do a little diagnosis to see what's going on, but she's running. The gas obviously isn't very good, so we'll hopefully run some gas, put some fuel cleaner in it and everything, but it runs. So the good news is we got it running. The bad news is it's got some kind of misfire. So I brought it over to my house where I can dive into it a little deeper, try to figure out why it's misfiring and get it running nice and smooth. First thing I want to do is just a compression test just to see what we're working with, make sure that the engine is good. So I'm gonna pull the fuel pump relay. By pulling out the fuel pump relay, we can run the car until it dies. That will take all the fuel pressure out, and then as we do the compression test, we won't be injecting fuel into the cylinders. I'll just pull all the wires and remove all the spark plugs all over again. So there are 3 of them that still have that little nub and a shorter gap, and then there are 3 of them that have this huge gap. I don't think it looks too bad. My guess is these 3 originally came from the back and they were harder to access, so they maybe didn't get replaced. But I didn't catch that the first time. That feels like enough to make a misfire right there. We're still going to compression test it just because then we know for sure that we have a healthy engine. So for the compression test, I'm going to thread this in where the spark plug goes, and we'll do these one at a time. Put the gauge on here, and I'll go turn it over about 4 times. It doesn't matter if you turn it over 3 times or 4 times, as long as you do it pretty consistent on each cylinder. So I tested the first cylinder and the compression seemed pretty good. 130, 140 PSI. Or was it? Because when I did the next 5, they were all about 30 PSI higher. That made me question the first one, so I went back to it to test it again. All right, so I'm back to this first cylinder we tested, which had the lowest rating of about 135. I just want to try it again, make sure I got that in well, because those threads were so dirty, so I didn't know if it was seating well. Let's try that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so I think we've got good enough compression on all cylinders to, for the most part, rule out compression. I think the most likely culprits here are these spark plugs. So before throwing these back in, I think we'll just get new ones. Goes to the end of my feeler gauge, almost at 0.1 there. So I got all new plugs to put in. We're gonna gap these, put these in. I think the compression is all within tolerance. New plugs going in. Definitely should have just got new spark plugs from the get-go rather than taking these out and putting them back in. Was not prepared, wasn't really thinking. All right, so now for the wires. I've got the center here going to the center. I've got the right going to the left and the left going to the right. Got a little dielectric grease I'm gonna put on the end of the plugs. And we've got a couple clips that just help organize this. Put those back on. I literally said one thing and did another. I just wasn't even paying attention. At this point, I am so confused on which wire goes to which plug. I can't remember how I took them off, and I'm getting conflicting information online. Okay, that looks much better. There we go. And yes, I did replace the other 3 wires that go to the back bank. Let's put the fuel pump relay back in. Gonna let the fuel pump prime a few times. So this is the big moment of truth. Will it start up, and how will it run if it does? All right, here we go. Something did not go right there. That is not sounding promising, but maybe it just needs to prime the fuel a little bit. Absolutely no luck, so it's time to go back to the drawing board in terms of the spark plug wiring order. But I noticed something else when I was checking that out. Oh my gosh, what is that? Look at that. That's gonna need to be fixed. So I'll have to get that PCV elbow ordered up, but I'm dying to see how this thing runs. So I get the spark plug wires in the final and correct order this time, so I hope. And let's see, this is our second big moment of truth. That sounds much better. With no obvious misfire and a pretty smooth idle, I think it's safe to take it on a test drive. So I'm driving the Taurus now, and at first it ran a little rough. It didn't idle super smooth. It seemed like it maybe had an intermittent miss, but I think that's cleaned up some. You know, there was some old gas in it, but it's got a full tank of fresh gas, so probably just getting a little bit of that newer gas through the system, as well as the fuel injector cleaner that was put in with the new gas tank. But here's another thing it's got going on. I believe the front rotors are shot, because when I hit the brake, look at that steering wheel. So I'm sure the front rotors are pretty warped. They've been sitting for a long time, so they had more than just surface rust on them. Down but not defeated. That's not a big deal. If there's one thing I know, it's brakes. So let's get it back to the garage. But before I do the brakes, I'm gonna swap out this PCV elbow. This old rotted one that's just kind of falling apart in my hands was causing a horrible vacuum leak. So I got a new Dorman one for like $8. Let me slap that on, and then we'll bring it in the garage and do the brakes. All right, so with the Taurus pulled inside, we're gonna be swapping out the front brake pads and rotors with some new stuff, and that'll take away that steering wheel wobble that you saw. So I'm just gonna jack it up one side at a time and remove the wheel. Then I'll take a 12mm and remove the caliper from the caliper bracket. I slid the caliper off, and the pads actually didn't look too bad, but obviously I'm gonna be replacing them since I'm putting a new rotor on. I'll compress the caliper piston really quick, and then I'll take off the larger bolts that hold the caliper bracket on. That'll allow me to take the rotor off easily, and this one wasn't even seized on. It just kind of came right off, which is pretty lucky. The other side was actually seized on pretty bad. I had to hit it with a hammer. So now I basically just need to put everything back together in reverse order using the new parts. And this is it. I mean, this is the last thing on this car that needed immediate attention, that was preventing it from being a good daily driver for my little brother Nate when he gets his license. When you're watching me do this, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, or comment down below if you've got any questions. The engagement really helps. Now I'm just putting the wheel back on, and I got to get this thing over to Nate immediately because he is ready to go with this car. So I got the car back to Nate, and it would be an understatement to say that he is psyched about it. That work was actually done a few months ago, so now he actually has his license, and he's been driving that thing all around town. And I'm super excited about it too, not because it's exciting to have a 2000 Ford Taurus, but because he has a car now that he can work on, that he can fix, upgrade. He actually put a new radio in it. I told him what to buy, and I said I would help him, and before you know it, he's just done it himself. He YouTubed it and figured it out. And that's exactly how I got started working on cars. I was 16, I had a car, and I wanted to fix it. I wanted to upgrade it, and I learned. So it's super cool to see him doing that. Of course, I am always down to help him with any car project he has, with the Taurus or any future car. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this.